Welcome to Movie and a Beer, everybody. This is Dan bringing us in, and we have a really hilarious, fun episode for you with some interesting beers and some friends joining us tonight.
Hello, listener. This is Blake, your merchandising expert. So, boys, I got in to talk to Purdue Chicken to make a Movie and a Beer, The Chicken. We have a ride at Universal called Movie and a Beer, The Ride.
The Ride.
And we're going to have a series, a collection of kazoos out there with just our branding on it, just Movie and a Beer, The Kazoo.
Fantastic. And I've got my Movie and a Beer Crocs.
Atta babe.
The Crocs.
Hey,
the Crocs
everybody. This is Brian, your wild and wacky expert on Yiddish culture.
Yiddish culture.
Yeah, when does a boy become a man?
I don't know. When does a boy become a man?
During his mitzvah.
Mitzvah. There you go. So we watched this Mel Brink. I messed this name up so much. Mel Brooks, known for many different comedic films.
Since we're never going to cover it on the podcast, Blazing Saddles,
Yes.
Classic take on Westerns.
History of the
World Part 1.
Yeah, and all that.
And Part 2. He did do a series.
That's true.
They were short
that was
vignettes.
Kind of bad.
The best part was John Knoxville as Rasputin. But we also had Young Frankenstein, The Producers.
Yeah.
Just a massive collection of hilarious comedies. But we watched Spaceballs today.
We watched Spaceballs. And with that, we had an interesting beer. So we had found...
Two of them.
Well, one was less interesting.
One was an amber and one was not quite as... They're both ambers, but one's a lager and one's an ale. So here's the question for the group is how do you know which is better if it's both amber? You know, it's really, really confusing to me as a beer judge to say, hey, there's two things that look real similar, but they're made with different yeast and they use the same hops and the same malts. That's in theory how it should be done, and yet they taste completely different.
Well, the better one is the one that tastes better.
Correct.
I mean, it's hard to fight that logic. I think Brian's right. For once, finally.
So we were down at
You do.
I was down at John's Marketplace
Once
in Southeast,
in a lifetime.
and I selected them based on the can art and the name and the correspondence to what we were going to watch. So, Obelisk Moon Crusher Amber Lager and Commensal Fermentation Articum Amber Ale. They are the same and yet different at the same time. Similar to how this movie is the same as Star Wars
or Star
Trek, and yet different at the same
Alien.
time. It's spoofy as heck. So if you've not seen Spaceballs, which has been on TV and it's out on streaming services.
It was actually available as an immediate video cassette before the movie was even finished.
Correct.
Yeah. We're going to spoil the heck out of this.
Yeah.
Why not?
They made it in 87. Like
and there's really nothing to spoil.
Yeah. You don't.
It was a 10-year anniversary for
Star Wars.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. It came out in 77. That's cool. I love that. Apparently,
in a distant galaxy, a planet.
George Lucas gave the go-ahead for a bunch of stuff.
Well, if he had to, because they spoofed the crap out of it. I mean, they name call and fourth wall break a lot, and that's
apparently
just
the Millennium Falcon's in a shot, and they sent Lucas a test screen. He's like, "Yeah, this is fine. I love this.
Yeah,
this is all good."
So, in a distant galaxy, planet Spaceball has depleted its air supply, leaving its citizens relying on a product called Perry Air. In desperation, Spaceball's leader, President
Scroob, which is Brooks spelled backwards.
It is almost. Brooks spelled back. So Mel Brooks orders the evil Dark Helmet, played by Rick Moranis, who we all know as
legendary.
He's an amazing comic and amazing film actor at that, to kidnap Princess Vespa, played by Daphne Zuniga, which we couldn't figure out what else she's been in other than a bunch of TV shows.
A lot of TV shows, smaller movies. She was in the Spaceballs, the animated show, which I can tell you from personal experience isn't good.
It's bad.
It's real bad.
So she is from the planet Druidia, which is an oxygen-rich environment.
So, Dan, that makes her a Druish princess.
It does.
That's funny. She doesn't look Druish.
She does not look Druish, and she is held hostage in exchange for the air of the planet. But help arrives for the princess in the form of renegade space pilot Lone Star with 2 R's.
Who's he played by?
Bill Pullman.
My president.
Who is everyone's president, as you know later on in life. In different movies, and his half man, half dog partner Barf,
Played by John
John
Candy.
Candy,
Yeah.
who we've done some John Candy movies, and we've paid homage to him. He's
always
an
a highlight.
amazing actor, and so this movie Spaceballs was made to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Star Wars,
To parody.
to parody it, and
10th
you know,
anniversary.
basically the first decade of George Lucas's entertainment empire, which is just tons of, you know, satire, where you've got Jabba the Hutt being played by Pizza the Hutt, and then
Voiced
you've got-
by Dom DeLuise. another
One of the
standard.
grossest characters I've ever seen on screen.
It's
Just
pretty
constantly
nasty.
leaking and gooing cheese.
gooing everywhere. It's pretty gross.
But we get that amazing joke, or else pizza's gonna send out for you.
So
Dan can't collect
We
himself.
broke Dan.
this is known as a creature who roars and cajoles while cheese melts off his forehead and big chunks of pepperoni slide down his jowls.
It's gross.
And pepper and all kinds of peppers
There's
and
a
all
pepper
kinds
on there.
There's
Yeah,
it's just
I
like,
don't
what the
remember
heck?
previous viewings being so grossed out by this character.
It's
but
pretty gross, dude.
He's really gross.
In 4K, Pizza the Hut is upsetting. It's
Yes.
truly body horror.
It is body horror. All right, so this is a great spoof. And you'll find that if you try to find reviews of this movie, you'll find a lot of people have a hard time reviewing it because it's a spoof. It's such a good spoof of many different films that it's just comedy. There's nothing, there's no plot, there's no story. I mean, there is, but it's so simplistic. I don't know. It's hard to kind of put a finger on.
That makes it easier for comedy. The more you try to muck it up, the harder it is to play off those tropes and really make the jokes land. If you had like Lone Star needs to find the prince, you know, hero finds a princess. If you also add in he has a half brother who's coming in and doing stuff, and someone else who's a bad guy is related to the princess, and they have a whole side thing. You gotta make space for jokes. Mel Brooks was a big fan of, like, if it's funny, go for it. Like, just simple as possible. Make more space for jokes.
And both physical comedy, verbal comedy.
Just love it all the time.
So sight comedy, there's
wall.
just really silly things written places.
I would say the comedy is pretty broad in this.
I'd agree.
I was coming into this thinking, okay, I'm going to analyze how the editing conveys the landing of jokes. Like, how's the plant and how's the payoff? Who is the camera on when they pay off the joke?
Yeah.
But I noticed, at least in this film, all the shots are really wide.
It's all wide
on the
shots.
payoff.
Yeah.
Certainly on the payoff, but kind of from the setup through the payoff, there's a lot of wide shots. So it's so broad, I can't comment on the editing as far as the jokes go.
And I wonder how much of that was just inexperience shooting a sci-fi movie. Because was Young Frankenstein out before this one?
Yes.
So I think that the smartest joke in that one was like all the, like, there has some references to Roll in the Hay or the Frau Blucher, where every time you hear her name, a horse whinnies. Like, unless you understand German, it doesn't make any sense, but it's a pretty clever joke for German speakers.
Yeah.
Here, it's a lot of body humor, like BAUDY, like, you know, sex jokes, a lot of like real the easiest
also
joke you can make.
Physical humor and references to other films and genres.
Like the thing I thought of
in pop culture.
Exactly. The thing I thought of was when they beam him. It's a bunch of great jokes in one premise of, hey, we have beaming technology, like on Star Trek.
And they literally say that. It's just like on Star Trek. It worked there.
They beam him, his head's backwards. He's like, what? No one told me my butt's so big. There's a joke. He scratches his own butt from the front. That's another joke. He beams back. We got it fixed there. We'll do it again. No. I'll just walk there. He's right next door.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just beaming from room to room. Yeah.
And it's
that's funny.
The whole premise is we have beaming technology, and they got 5 to 6 jokes out of it.
Yeah. And that's learning how to write and be effective in taking something somewhat referenced, and anyone who
sort of
has
benign.
It is, but anyone who's seen those movies or TV shows knows the reference, and it's such. At that point in time, 10 years on, and Star Trek had been out for 20 years at that point, because that was done in the 60s, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
they even, as we mentioned, as we're watching it, it's the same sound effects, same visuals applied.
Star Wars was 76.
Yeah, but Star Trek
was 69.
Yeah.
So how old was Planet of the Apes? We get that reference.
Yeah, that reference is at the end. it's probably
Early
early
70s.
70s. Got to be
Yeah,
early
It
70s.
feels very 70s.
They borrowed from a lot of pop culture and they borrowed from a lot of sci-fi references, and they do it really effectively. They don't make fun of it.
No.
They say, "Hey, this is a funny part of that, which we interpret this
We're
way."
going to expound upon what's funny.
Yeah, look how
Yes.
silly this is. Like the Yoda character is named Yogurt, and they have a whole run of like Yogurt the Magnificent, Yogurt the Wise. Please, just plain yogurt.
Plain yogurt.
And then he speaks Yiddish, which is my specialty.
Yes.
Mel Brooks is a Jewish man, and he always
Does some Jewish humor.
he'll throw that in there. You better believe it.
Yes, he does. And there's also they do play on the whole marketing thing. And Blake, you had mentioned that before we did the podcast that he made all of his money, or maybe it was Brian that mentioned it, but he made all of his money. He didn't get a director's fee.
Brian was telling us George Lucas.
George Lucas on Star Wars didn't take a director's fee, but he had 100% of the marketing tied up. So all the marketing from all the Star Wars figures and posters and soundtracks, all those royalties went directly to George Lucas, not the studio.
And that's why he's super duper uber rich right now. And
that's why companies don't do that anymore.
They don't, because they learned, we didn't realize that was going to happen. And they actually play off of that quite a bit in this, in part of the story. It's like Yogurt has his own shop with the branding of the movie,
Spaceballs,
logos,
sheets, and
everything.
sippy cups.
And they do the joke correctly, where they don't show it like they show that shop. So now we're introduced to the idea of, okay, there's merchandise of Spaceballs all over it. And then for the rest of the movie, you see Spaceballs the sheets, Spaceballs the toilet paper. Like you keep seeing Spaceballs stuff after that joke.
Yeah.
If you saw it before, you'd be like, "What? Why is there a Spaceballs toilet paper? Why is there a
what's
Spaceballs
going
car?"
on?
Yeah. So from a joke perspective, they set it up, they talk about it, they set it up, they then show it.
And then they play
punchline,
Keep
over and over and over, ineffectively.
Also as callbacks as well. Yeah.
And I think that's a great method that he uses in a lot of his films, in being able to use those references effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people can't do that very easily, or well, if they try, it usually falls flat. But I've seen a number of his movies, and they all do it really effectively.
Yeah, they're all very well written. I was just thinking about like the other movies, like Blazing Saddles relies a lot on like the characters being the driving force of the humor. Because this is a huge cast in this movie. Blazing Saddles relatively small.
It doesn't feel like
there's like 5 people, so it's fully like it's about.
This is a short film, and it doesn't feel like it. It feels like 30 minutes.
It feels like a space epic.
Yeah, it's like 30 minutes long, but it's actually a lot longer than that. It just feels that way because you're engrossed in it. And the opening scene alone is 5 minutes of the same ship passing by. And I'm like, has it been 5 minutes? It's like, no, it's been 30 seconds. I'm like, it feels like 5 minutes.
Because that's the expert level of no, slower.
Slower.
I guarantee they ran it, and he Brooks probably told him, no, slower than that.
Slow down.
It's already like 2 minutes, Mel. Yeah, exactly.
That's the point.
That's what I want.
Because it's so big.
Ship.
Big.
With the "We Break for Nobody" bumper sticker.
And there's a lot of bumper stickers in this movie.
At least 2.
And they held good. I mean, so a lot of older movies that are comedies don't age well. There's a lot of references that don't necessarily are going to age well unless you're from that generation or earlier.
There's a long VHS joke that
won't work for
really
young audience.
If anyone who is born after VHS is kind of faded out, that's kind of lost on them. There's a great classic comedy bit of Who's on First with the we just miss it. When was then? Now, then, when? Like that was a really fun little run. It's just good like wordplay humor. The Wrigley gum joke I pointed out, like, oh yeah,
that's not going to hit.
The double mint gum, because they were twins and they're chewing it, and you got their names mixed up because they're twins.
But they still have a fun just joke for everybody where he says the wrong name to both twins despite them introducing themselves.
Right.
That's a fun little like Mel Brooksy thing.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of the Mel Brooks pantheon, how do you guys think this holds up?
It doesn't have the same impact that like say Blazing Saddles has because of just the social connotations that tries to tackle. And you know that he's got a huge cadre of writers and comedians that work with him on these films.
And History of the World is such an epic, over referenced thing. Young Frankenstein, I think, is still also ahead of this. I think it's firmly in the center. It's got a lot of great lines.
it's fun to watch for me.
Yeah.
But I would say there are other Mel Brooks films that are
A little better.
more fun to watch, and definitely more skillfully directed.
Yeah. This is probably something he thought, well, this would be fun to do. Whereas the other movies where I want to actively do this.
Yeah.
And they know and make fun of the fact that this is on a set. This is on a soundstage. They don't care.
Right.
There's and most
Well,
Mel Brooks
this is
films
a
have
send up of sci-fi
being fake as hell.
TV and films, really.
I mean, they reference
And
Star
it
Trek
references
outright.
Star Wars, Aliens, Star Trek, Yellow Submarine. What else?
There's
Lawrence of Arabia.
Lawrence of Arabia is in there.
Rambo.
They have
Rambo.
Rambo's done a
Yeah.
couple of times. They actually say, "Hey, it worked for Rambo."
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, they have no problem calling
printer,
out pop
printer
culture.
technology.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think that works for the film because it's spoofing it. It's meant to be that way.
Oh, yeah.
It's
They're
meant
not-
to be light. It's
it's
not
meant
meant
to
to be
be-
It's
art.
the same thing as with like Scary Movie. The first two
Yes.
movies before all those spoof movies just went sideways and didn't.
They tried to be real, but they weren't.
It's just bad writing.
Yeah,
Like I watched Epic Movie and only got like 20 minutes in. Like this is not fun.
This is
Whereas
dumb.
Whereas Scary Movie again, it had a set premise that it just follows like this, basically the plot of Scream, but with like
Yeah.
Matrix references and a Pennywise monster getting attacked by a guy's member, like all that stuff, because there's a set storyline to follow. Like with this, like it's got the
Yeah.
base. You just layer all the cream cheese and all the different ingredients you want on top. A nice schmear.
They stick to it somewhat.
Yiddish.
The story does reflect what happens in Star Wars a little bit. It's
Sorta.
loosely based on.
There's an epic evil empire, but we're following a small cadre of heroes.
Correct. And what you do in Star Wars, and most of this,
Yeah.
all the spin-offs of Star Wars since have all been about following a specific character or set of characters.
Yeah.
And that's all it's about. It's about individual storytelling, which this does good. It does show you the princess's transition from being a druidic princess,
Haughty princess.
haughty, to being someone who's like, he didn't take the money. I want him now.
I can look past his scruffy nerf herder ways.
Nerf herder. Which they don't say. They don't reference that, which they should have.
Well, they only say it once in the movie, right? In all the movies.
You're a scruffy nerf herder? Yes.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, he is.
I know Family Guy Blue Harvest did that where he like hits her and goes, "That's our word." You don't say it.
Correct.
No, I still love this movie. I'm still cracking up at it.
Soundtrack.
Great
Amazing.
soundtrack. Got some like real nice needle drops going on. An epic score. An original song written for the movie. Unless there's some other movie I don't know titled Spaceballs.
Bon Jovi rocks, baby.
Yeah, but all right, that song was definitely in the vein of mid 80s music videos.
Yes. There was literally a music
that makes
video
sense.
happening in it. We talked about that. We
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, there's a dance number going when they were evacuating, but it turned into a dance video. And not everybody got off the ship. And then, the head and the arm,
At least the bear
carrying the
did.
torch. Yeah.
Yeah, and the quote romantic scene had some definitely recognizable romantic music.
Right.
The Lawrence of Arabia scene was very
Combing the desert.
epic. The Lawrence of Arabia, the kind of the Star Wars music was definitely
the John
a
Williams
sound
kinda
like
score.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely was there.
So
And-
they copied the style very well.
Very closely. And I think they even borrowed some. I mean, it sounded like a Star Wars soundtrack.
Yeah.
It really did.
Some of the wipes, the music with the wipes did sound like I was watching. It sounded like I was watching a Star Wars movie.
Yes.
I was
Which I think is
disappointed.
ideal. It's just key to the comedy of it.
I was disappointed that the scene where they were lightsaber schwatzing each other, schwartzing each
the
other.
Schwartzes were as big as each other.
They were. I was disappointed that the sound effects that they were using weren't actual straight up Star Wars. They
yeah.
they sounded a little different, and I don't know, maybe they didn't get the permissions to do that because those are, very
But
specific.
they were close enough to know what they were doing.
Yeah.
And it could be a choice on Mel's, I call him Mel, Mr. Brooks's part to change it just enough. Because he also just kept saying like the Schwartz, there's an upside and a downside versus light and dark. They had to have rings for
Yeah.
whatever reason, but then you learn later, you didn't need a ring. It was inside you all along. Like, so I think he just wanted to change enough to be like, this is my thing. When they merchandise, they make their own shorts, lightsaber
Yes.
toys.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. Which, there's rifles and toys and a flamethrower gun.
Kids love that one.
And I wish I had a flamethrower every time the freaking
And
gets ice
sheets.
storms out here.
They
And
had
sheets.
special sheets.
Special sheets that the president was using effectively.
No, we never did go back to see what book he was reading, or
No.
quote unquote
No,
reading.
we didn't.
It was probably trivia on
He was
that.
holding it upside down.
I love
do
that
remember
joke.
Probably was.
I still do that today when someone hands me a book or a piece of paper. Like, I flip it over. Doesn't make any sense. Mel Brooks playing 2 roles. That was fun.
Yep.
He's done that in Blazing Saddles as the native chief who also spoke Yiddish.
Yes,
And
of course.
and
And was very brown.
Barry Brown. And when he played that business head, I forget who he plays in Blazing Saddles, but the guy's cross-eyed and he's just a doofus.
Yeah.
But here he's gold.
Yeah.
Gold and regular.
One thing I missed was the cantina scene.
Who
didn't-
shot first? They did not do that.
They did not spoof the
I
cantina
think that was
scene.
them going to the diner. Unless that's a
Maybe.
Unless it's a Hitchhiker's Guide reference.
Maybe.
At the diner at the end of the universe. But if they didn't do Doctor Who, I can't imagine they would do that.
Yeah, I don't know. That
They never really had a cantina.
That should be a Google question for the day. Like,
Yeah.
we should research that. What
And I
spoofing
think
Hey,
was-
they
listeners,
could
tell
have
us.
had a lot of fun with the cantina scene.
I wonder how much of it was the budget for the staff because they had. Well, shoot, they had all those Spaceballs on the ship. All those assholes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't believe me. It's their legal name.
And they had a lot of character actors in this film.
Mhm,
A lot of characters.
Stephen Tobolowsky, I double checked. It was him when they caught their stunt doubles. George
Nice.
Weiner, like the Colonel Sanders, he's been
Yeah.
in a lot of.
A lot of
So-
stuff.
I think it would have been a cool opportunity to take some of these actors, cover them in makeup and gear, and just do a cantina scene with the same actors.
Just
in
weird
costume.
aliens.
Yeah. That'd have been funny. But as you're saying, like, how much budget do we have? What could we cut? Would that be needed to tell the story, or is that just a nice to have? I think that would have just been a nice to have. You don't necessarily would have needed that to really tell the
Sure,
story
sure.
solidly. It would have been a nice callback, but
Well, a lot of the film was Rick Moranis doing stuff with
Dude,
the
Rick
helmet.
Moranis stuff.
Why
Yeah.
are we always preparing? Just go. So you should sit down. Wham. What's the bubbling and churning? What kind of radar is this? It's not a radar. It's Mr. Coffee. I know that. He's looking around all mad. Everyone's covering their crotches. What a great movie. What a very silly
Please
movie.
don't shots
A
me.
lot of very broad humor. Like,
Mhm.
I'm going to jam the radar, and he throws a pot of jam at it. Raspberry jam.
Only one man would give me the raspberry. Another reference I'm not sure if kids would get. Do we call sticking your tongue out and doing that?
I don't know.
Do people call that a raspberry still?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm-
I'm not a kid.
We don't hang
I
out.
don't have kids.
We don't hang out with children.
We don't. I mean, we know some, and we do occasionally hang out with one. But
I do
yeah,
torment
don't know.
the 21-year-old by dabbing at him.
Yeah. He's like, stop doing that.
He,
Makes it sad.
he
Oh,
is
stop
not
this?
a child, sir.
That's true. Legal
Man,
adult.
child.
Oh, like a Dark Helmet
Yes.
with his dolls.
So, since he's 21, he can drink beer.
Ooh.
But why would we talk about beer on this podcast about movies and beer? Oh my god!
Yeah, and well, it's not
Wow.
canned
I'm
air.
blown.
It's not air
It's not a
Perrier.
delicious
It's
Perry air.
Perrier
Very air.
from the planet Druidia,
Mhm.
which they don't act like Druidia princesses all day long, but they do a little bit. The dad acts that way.
The dad's
was-
going on about the good deal on the Mercedes.
Dick Van Patten.
Dick
is
Van Patten,
Great
he-
in this.
he's so
a fun
brown.
character.
He's so fake tan.
He is
It's
so
hilarious.
weird in this film.
It's a very either like Jersey or like from Jersey moved to California kind of character.
Yeah.
Especially the whole thing about like I got a good deal. My cousin worked there. My cousin owns the shop, like Prince or King Murray or whatever. I paid cash, no big deal. He's looking around like, okay, it's fine. Just
Yeah.
save your daughter.
Just-
Sounds very New
move
York.
on,
It
move
sounds
on.
like very jizzy.
Go have a
Oh my god.
go have a delicious
Look at that.
space beverage.
Yes. For $1 million space bucks.
Such a
It's like the $1 million.
that's a comedy number. That's absolutely a comedy number.
Yeah. He just thought of that off the top of his head. Who knows? So it would be interesting to look up the trivia to see how much of those lines were actually ad-libbed and not
I
written.
think a lot of them are written. I feel like Mel doesn't do a lot of improv.
Yeah, Mel writes a script.
But are you expected to stick with it if you're all these real super famous comedic type people?
I think you are, because Mel has an ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's well known in Hollywood. And also, Bill Pullman, Daphne Zuniga, not really comedy people.
Yeah.
John Candy.
And
Rick Moranis,
also,
sure.
this is early in both of their careers.
Yes,
Oh,
very
yeah.
early. They look very young, very 20-something-ish.
Just wee babies.
Yeah.
So we
yes,
had 2 beers.
We did. So this is the time of the podcast that we're going to transition over to talking about beer.
Oh, real quick. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
But the scene in which Dark Helmet is playing with his dolls was not in the screenplay. Writer, producer, director Mel Brooks came up with the idea on the set one day and told this to Rick Moranis, who then improvised the entire scene.
There you go.
So
that one is improvised.
So there might be stuff
and
that
that was
Mel,
super funny too.
I'm sure something. God, it's so funny.
It is.
Tickle your boyfriend too. I imagine there's things where if someone pitches to Mel, hey, I think this would be funny. Like I think the voice change for Dark Helmet was a Moranis idea.
Yeah. If funny recognizes funny.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. As does beer.
All right.
And so thank you for hanging in with us so far, listener. We've now going to transition. We've been talking about the wonderful movie Spaceballs that came out a long time ago. Lots of referencing to old pop culture movies, TV shows, just references to even commercials and things. We had a couple of amber beers. One was a lager, one was an ale. And as you know, one is warm fermented, one is cold fermented. And these are both by reputable and somewhat newer breweries. So you say, oh, an amber beer, they're similar, but not similar. Like this movie is similar to being a real movie and about a real topic.
Similar to Star Wars.
Similar to Star Wars,
really.
but not really. It's a spoof.
War in the Stars. What an idea.
So I mentioned to the gentleman here that, so we're drinking this amber lager.
Hey, Brian, who do you think he's talking about when he says gentleman?
Gentleman at the table.
Not myself.
No, not me either. I'm a real rascal.
Lager, so it's either going to be just using a slightly darker malt bill, but be a traditional lager, which I think it was because I'm reading the ingredients and that's what it says. From Obelisk Beer, we had Moon Crusher Amber Lager, but so we started out with Articum Red Ale from Commensal Fermentation. That was the other one.
Is that the first one we had, the Amber Ale?
So we had Obelisk.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Which was the lager first, right? And then we moved over to Commensal, which was the ale second. And I think we just randomly picked the order. I don't think we had intentionally done them in one way or the other.
Right, we didn't really have a
I just grabbed a beer and was like, all right, let's go. Let's do this.
Which feels right for a Mel Brooks movie watch.
We just attacked it as it was. So is there any marketing copy on that can that you can read, or is it?
There is.
It's gold on white on can.
I mean, I don't know what's wrong with you guys. I have glasses.
Yeah, I can read.
I can read. Second Runnings beer made via the Party Guile process, where multiple beers are made from one mash. The style of each release varies based on the initial beer brewed. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
not as flowery as I was expecting. Party Gyle? Gile?
Yeah, I don't have a reference
Not
to
sure.
that. That's a process that I'm not terribly familiar with. But this batch of Moon Crusher was born from the mash of our newest barley wine, Beyond Oblivion. Toasted bread crust notes and subtle dark fruits balanced by herbal European hops and a clean ferment with lager yeast all make this beer a delight to drink.
It was a delight. I liked it.
It was good to drink, but not so great to smell.
Yeah.
The nose on this was bad.
Yeah, we think that there's probably the beginnings of a heat struck kind of situation on it. It had been sitting refrigerated when I bought it, and it sat refrigerated since, but you don't know how it was handled between the brewery and where it was taken to be sold. You don't know how the distributor handled it or if it was direct sales. I'm assuming direct sales because Obelisk is pretty small here in Portland. They did production here in Portland, but they opened their production out in Astoria. And so this is a 5% lager, Hallertau, Mittelfrüh, and Czech Saaz hops. So standard German and Czech profile hops that you would use. That's why it had a lighter acidity to it, but it did have a little bit of roasted note. And the whole thing was like, so you're taking the mash from a barley wine, which is a big, heavy, giant beer that you're over pushing the malts on.
Yeah, pretty strong. And
then reusing that mash, you're taking it after it's already been used once, and you're like, hey, there's still enough in here to make a lager from. So they did the math on it. They're like, hey, here's our mash efficiency and how much sugar we need to get out of it in order to make a certain ABV. So they just they let it sit again
Does
in
that
water.
dull the flavor a little bit?
I would assume it would, but
Okay.
you're just pulling out less sugars. You're probably going to have to mash longer in order for those sugars to break down out of the husk and the kernels of the grains that are sitting there.
Is there a point of no return for doing that, where you'll eventually have like no sugar left in it?
Correct. Yeah.
Is it physically less when it pulls out the sugar, or it's just like so it's like less of the stuff?
Yeah.
Because pulled from
As
it?
things
So
break
you're
down,
saying
I mean, they come
It's
out
got
and
to
they
sit
dilute.
longer to pull more sugar out.
Well,
more
what is
sugar
left,
out.
yeah, to pull what's
Okay.
left, and that's
Makes
why
sense.
when you're doing a barley wine, you're overcompensating, so you have more grain than you need, just to make sure you have enough water in the sugar to do the higher alcohol percent and let the yeast burn out more than what
Barley
you would with the
wine,
lager.
more like barley wine. Am I
Barely.
right?
Well, maybe.
Hilarious. I'm fun.
Wah,
Yeah.
wah.
So this moon
A regular Mel
crusher,
Brooks.
the can looks kind of spacey. I don't know where the name Moon Crusher came from. I don't know if that's the line of beers and they're just changing it up periodically or not.
It just sounds fun to say.
Yeah.
Moon Crusher.
And it was okay to drink and it warmed up and it changed in flavor a little bit, but
Did you like it? Did you like it better when it was colder or warmer? Because I liked it all the way through.
I liked it all the way through,
I finished mine
but
a little faster than I meant to.
the off flavor on the aromatics faded after a couple of minutes after being poured.
Mhm.
It got less
Offensive.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
word to use. And I would say offensive from the standpoint of like dirty sock, or even it had an unpleasant aroma.
It smelled like a Spaceball.
And that happens.
It did smell like space.
I've had many lagers where that does happen, and it is a matter of the yeast and the hops interacting in a way. When you open the can and pour, you don't necessarily want to just sniff it right away. Sometimes you do, and then you're like, "Oh, that smells really rotten," and then you let it sit a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Lagers are going to change as they warm up, so you want to taste it right away, and not necessarily judge the aroma off the first pour.
Right.
Especially out of a can, because cans get heat struck way more easily than bottles do, as far as I understand. And who knows? This could have been sitting in a pallet somewhere in a store and or in a car or a truck, and who knows? Who knows how it's handled? And or what? Something like this or not.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to spoof that as much as I can. But anyway, so
I like it.
So how did it fit with the movie?
it was an interesting thing to taste. It didn't distract me from the film.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say it was bad, but I think both beers went okay with the film because they were similar,
Yeah,
but tasted different.
Mel Brooks movies are pretty easy to pair. You don't really need to do a lot of thinking.
I mean, you
for a Mel
literally
Brooks
just
movie.
like surfing on your phone or playing a game while you watch it, and you don't need to watch the
This
screen.
isn't
You
an
got it.
in-depth film.
No,
It's not
a
like
comedy.
watching Primer and you have to think about it. It's like,
Correct.
that's a funny joke. Another funny joke.
And the jokes are all pretty much set up and pay off.
Mhm.
Set up
And
pay off.
unfortunately, all of us have seen it numerous times.
Not unfortunately. I love this movie.
Well, I mean, we're fortunate that we've all seen it enough times where it's okay to like look away for a moment or five because you're like, okay, yeah, I know what's going on the screen. It's the same thing.
But I think the beer matched pretty well. But again, it's pretty easy to match the Mel Brooks movie.
Yeah.
I'm curious
Yeah,
if
I
we
would
think
agree.
this. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
But that's all.
Right
that's
on.
all.
I
That's
mean,
all she
I
wrote.
was going to segue to the second beer,
That's all she wrote.
which I enjoyed more.
Yeah. Oh, we're aligning.
No, I'm just trying to copy Brian as he was talking. Oh,
Yeah, whatever.
Oh,
That's
this
gonna be
is
audio
a
hell.
fun
That's
joke.
embarrassing.
All right, so second beer.
I'm not
Second,
This is a dark ale.
Yeah.
Red
amber.
ale?
Amber. It's
Amber
a
ale.
well, amber ales and red ales are a little bit different based on their hop profile. I do not know exactly what hops they use in this beer. So, Commensal Fermentation is a newer brewery. This is their Articum Red Ale,
Spot.
which has been one of their core beers since they opened, I believe. So they're based on North Williams, which is the formerly known as Grains of Wrath
That's
taproom
right.
location
I
in
still miss
Portland.
Grains of Wrath.
And before that, it was the New Old Lompox 5 Points or 5 Corners. I don't remember, but
That's before I moved here. I don't know what that is.
yeah, it was a long time ago. So it was it's been a production tap room space for a long time. There are, if you drive by that, you'll see a green silo behind the building. And yes, that actually does get used. Grains of Wrath I don't know if they did any production there or not, but the gentleman who opened up Commensal was a former brewer at Cascade Barrel Brewing. So he knows his sours really well. He knows brewing really well. I mean, they that organization, that company had been around a long time, making a lot of sours and a lot of big beers. And they also made some normal beers. If you ever went to their out by where our friend Deb lives, they had a tap room out there called the Raccoon Lodge, and they actually did have normal beer on tap. Whereas if you went to their tasting room down in Southeast Portland, it was just mainly sours and maybe one or two non-sour beers. So people are like, oh, they only do sours. Like, no, they actually do a whole bunch of other beers. They just don't have them available everywhere.
Right.
And it was a small production company. They had they have still a lot of stuff in barrels and cans and bottles that they're trying to get rid of. The gentleman who owned it passed away a year or so ago, and the family decided to just close, but they're doing it in a slow roll. Tap rooms closed, restaurant changed over to somebody else, but they still have their beers out there. You can find them. It's weird to find them because it's been like a year, but they're still out there.
Well, it's weird because they jump out at you from tall grass like a Pokemon.
And then you have to capture them.
You have to capture it and chug it.
Yes, you do. So this, we've digressed off of it. So Commensal Fermentation.
I heard grass. Oh,
So-
no, Pokemon.
It's a 5% unknown IBU. So the malt forward notes, a toffee, cacao, raisin, medium body, not overly bitter. There's actually very mild hop profile on this one.
yeah.
The bitterness comes a little bit more from the toasted and roasted flavor profile. It's like a Dunkel and a Bock got together and made it happy. So those are two types of German beers that there's.
A Dunkelbach.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, it's a lot of rich yeasty goodness and very smooth.
I would say it's very toffee flavored. Very.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have said caramel.
Caramel, and, well, not quite creamy, but caramel, like really
Yeah.
nice
I
caramel.
think those make sense. That feels right. I never think about what toffee tastes like, but I
I
think
mean,
feels correct.
it's definitely kind of a sweet beer.
Yeah.
I would
It
say.
was sweeter.
and has a little bit of a dryness on the
But
back.
I enjoy it, but I'm not a hophead, so
Yeah, and this has like zero hop profile.
Oh,
It's
absolutely, yeah.
just a nice, smooth, clean beer. As an amber ale, it fits the category really, really well. Whereas the hops are subdued, the malts stand out, are prevalent. You can taste them. You know there's some layering going on. You have some old dried fruit. You've got some toffee. You've got some maybe bread crusty, medium body chew going on. There's like cacao and raisin, as I mentioned. Is like those are the two that kind of stood out to me the most as far as like hints that I could catch.
Raisin is what I was getting, and I don't hate raisins. I don't love raisins. So anytime I get something that has raisin flavor, I'm always torn. Like I kind of like this, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of distracted
But
a little bit.
it's not super prevalent. That's
Right,
a
right,
nice
right.
kind of additive to it, and that's just coming from the malts and the really good selection of malts that they're using. And obviously, a brewer who's been around the block a lot and he knows his recipes and he's coming up with his own stuff.
Like
and just
Brian.
really,
yes.
really well done beer. The can has some interest. It's
There's not really much copy, but the art's pretty cool.
the art is kind of like an explosion-y kind of like looks like the Death Star when the Death Star exploded,
Or the Mega Maid.
or the Mega Maid.
When she went from blow to suck.
Yep.
Or no, suck to blow.
Yeah. So I actually asked them what the name of the brewery meant. Commensal means
You've asked me several times, and I can never remember.
so commensal, as you can imagine, is a symbiotic relationship where it benefits both sides and not just one side. So yeast. So you have all these ingredients that are here, and you have the yeast, and they do good things to each other. The fermentation process works well for all the parties involved, and not just one party. So that's where that name comes from,
So
and
it's
that's
a
actually
true party.
it is a true party.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's more authentic to like what real brewing is. It's not just, hey, the yeast is doing one thing and that's it. It's actually helping the product become more, I guess you'd say, flavorful and more approachable and doing what it needs to do.
Yeah.
And the ingredients aren't being modified in a negative way unless the yeast is old and bad or stressed out and then byproducts other bad flavors.
I just pictured a yeast with like a fedora and a jacket getting home from work, just being stressed out. Like, I don't have time for this right now. Like, I can't do any of this stuff.
And the malt like rubs his shoulders and
You're just like,
cooks him
you're
some
okay,
dinner.
you're okay.
Damn it, Carol. You don't understand.
So yeah, good. I think the second beer went way better with the film, because towards the end of the film is where some more of the action, I think, actually takes place, and some
It's
more
where most of the action
one-to-one
takes
spoofs,
place.
kind of,
Yeah.
instead of side jokes, it's more spoofy.
Mhm.
I appreciate both the film and the beer, like, doing what they need to do. We've had amber lagers and amber ales before,
Sure.
not at the same time in the same movie. So we're just like, this is a good opportunity to say, hey, I think the lager did what it needed to do, but not as effectively as, say, an ale would when you're looking at an amber beer.
I did like the order we went in, though. Like, I think starting with the amber,
Milgar,
with the amber lager was a smart move while it was more chill and setting up the movie.
lighter flavor.
Yeah.
And then when things were popping off and getting crazy and payoff is all happening, we got that more complex, more flavorful, sweeter kind of beer to go with.
But where did he get that outfit that they showed up in to crash the wedding? Where did he get that? Did he
At
just
your
have
local
that?
costume rental.
Where did he get that?
Spaceballs, the tux rental.
I know, it looked
Kind of
kind of like
a
Pirates of Penzance, like lots of flourish and metal buckles on the front, and
kind of a disco,
very 70s disco.
Captain.
But then
Captain and Tennille kind of look.
Yeah, kind of.
But then Barf just had like a fancy version of a mechanic's outfit.
Yeah, he was wearing
I never noticed that before.
Not a.
It's a jumpsuit.
It was a jumpsuit. Yeah, I was gonna say prison suit, but not quite prison suit.
Yeah.
It was a jumpsuit. But
Yeah.
you know what a mechanic would wear if they didn't want to get dirty.
Maybe he used the shorts. I don't know. I don't know
know.
how it works.
I don't know. And the tail has a mind of its own.
It does.
The dirty dog.
All right, so
That tale was lots of his physical humor.
it
all
did
through the
smack
film.
some people upside the head a few
Smacking
times,
Lone Star in the head a bunch.
going up dresses a few times.
I think
Hey,
we just named them all.
we haven't mentioned yet the droid, the number one droid.
Oh, Joan Rivers voiced the droid.
Yes, the wedding. Well,
A kind of
the
female
princess's droid.
C-3PO.
Yes, very much so. Who had alarms that would go off at various times, or alerts for like virginity
When she was
and
sleeping, when her
and-
ward was going to lose her virginity.
Yeah.
She had a point where she had a super vision
yes,
to see through Dark Helmet's ruse. The actor in the suit was Lauren Yarnell Jansen.
it's like a physical comedy actor,
Mhm.
or like a clown, or a mime, or something like that. 'Cause-
trained dancer, successful variety artist.
Oh, there you go.
So taught to be very physical, which you kind of have to do with outfits like
with
that.
droids. When
Yeah.
you don't have speaking parts.
And
wish
and
we had
I
an
want to
R2D2.
say I want to say that the shoes were just a single unit, and they were on like roller skates, because
yeah.
they just pushed them around.
Well,
Yes.
you also notice that Lone Star carries her down the stairs because
yes,
stairs and roller skates do not mix.
correct. They do not. So yeah, if it's a single unit, and I did not ever see them separate, except for when they were walking through the desert.
When they fell over and
Yeah.
had the legs
Well,
kicked up.
in a later scene, she was kind of roller skating through the halls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. That seemed really fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. So we digress again. This is a fun movie. If you haven't seen it, if you haven't caught,
I would
Parts
say
of
it's
it.
a simple movie, so we've kind of run out of analysis.
yes, it's hard to do it on a
well,
spoof.
well worth watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those kids out there that preteen, teen, high school age,
Well,
if
they say shit and asshole a bunch.
well, you hear that at school. I mean, those aren't bleepable words at this point in time. They're part of the lexicon. I think anyone that has any reference to older stuff from the 80s or even 70s would understand what's being spoofed really well.
Oh yeah.
But if they're a younger person that's just on, various platforms and doesn't know or watch old movies or have any reference to them, they're not going to get this at all, I don't think. I don't know. It'd be a hard stretch because this is all spoofing TV and movie.
Mm-hmm. In a very Mel Brooksy way, which is always pretty much standardly broad comedy.
Yeah. And you have to know Jewish culture, and you have to know.
You don't have to know it.
I mean, you don't have to know it, but you have to be familiar with
It certainly helps to know why
speaking?
he-
What is Yiddish, and why is he speaking it?
Yeah, you've got to kind of know the spoofs of Jewish culture.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
If you do get it, it's quite hilarious and fun to watch. But if you don't, I don't know. I don't know if this movie would go over well. Maybe that's why it's not on TV anymore. Blazing Saddles I've seen on like TNT.
I would guess in about 20 years, this is going to be irrelevant.
It's going to be a time capsule. It's going to be
Yeah.
a piece of memorabilia that
Film history.
that it needs to be there, because if you don't make fun of it, then you don't know how much relevance it had in society at that point in time or in culture. I guess that's a way of looking at it. Right?
That's how you mark what things were big in pop culture, and Saturday Night Live makes fun of it.
Correct. But again, music. I think they had Van Halen, they had John Bon Jovi, they had a couple of rock songs. There was
a lot of
classical scoring from other movies. We kept trying to. What movie is that from? What does that sound like?
And an amazing song, Spaceballs.
Yes, and then the evacuation scene was sort of like a music video, early music video,
80s
MTV
romp.
era. Yeah, totally cool. So check this movie out if you have an opportunity. I highly recommend any Mel Brooks movie to people because it does reflect the point in time that it was made. Or they were made.
I don't think there's a single dud. Like, shoot, the producers, it's still hilarious.
Yeah.
Springtime for Hitler, that's amazing.
Yes, exactly.
Mel Brooks is a great director and comedy writer, for sure.
And if you do, by chance, seek this movie out, have something fun and interesting with it. I think find it. The amber went really well with it because it wasn't hoppy and offensive.
Yeah.
Something more smooth, something lighter. Something that's not going to detract.
Cider would work well with this movie.
Yeah, it probably would, or wine, or maybe even a shot of bourbon. I mean, you can
But
go
whatever
all kinds
you
of
do,
directions.
as this comes from yogurt, if you don't hydrate, you're gonna dehydrate.
Exactly.
It fades into gold dust.
Yeah, sparkles and all.
Buy yogurt.
By yogurt. Yeah. So, as always, the opinions expressed during the taping of this recording are those of the hosts. We thank you all for hanging out and enjoying Spaceballs with us and these great amber beers, be it a lager and an ale. Check out Commensal Fermentation. I can't speak enough about them here in North Portland off of Williams. They do really good beer. It's a small little tap room. They have cans available. You can get them in John's Marketplace and a few other more exclusive spots because it is self-distributed. I can't speak enough about them because every time I go in there, I get treated really, really well, even by the owner who's there often. So check them out.
You always come in real hot-headed.
Yeah, and check out Obelisk if you're ever up in Astoria. They're doing really good stuff. I think that they're still doing part-time commercial brewing here in Portland at the former it was Modern Times. It was something else before that. And then when Modern Times left, it got bought out by Living House. Well, Living House is the primary brewer there, but yeah, it's over on Morrison and 10th.
This is fascinating.
They do a lot of interesting, 7th, not 10th, sorry. There's like 3 or 4 breweries that brew out of that location or did. So check them out. You can find them. I don't know if they're in Freddy's or anything like that, but I do know they're at St. John's Market or John's Marketplace and probably other bottle shops or can shops
or Dan's fridge. Find out where Dan lives.
Yeah, come steal beer
Come
out
to
of
Dan's house.
Yeah,
everyone, come on down.
Yeah.
All right.
And then cuts address.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, this is Blake saying, watch a Mel Brooks movie. The world's scary. You need to laugh once in a while.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Brian signing off. Thanks for listening.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Spaceballs.
Spaceballs, get 'em hot.